might have noticed I've been a little upset about this James Fields thing. Does not sit well with me what's going on with that boy, folks. And so I got to riffing about this on Gab the other day. And said something like, the fucking left, they celebrate too soon. We're gonna fucking destroy you, basically, right? And some fucking dumb nigger who works at the Washington Post. This is why we used to not teach these assholes how to read and write. They can't do either, right? He categorizes this thing as a terroristic threat, and of course, then every fucking other asshole claims the ability from that guy's lie to do the same, right? When I have been clear throughout that what I'm talking about here is fucking changing political outcomes, right? But of course, these people are like, well, we're terrorists. We use the government for political outcomes, so But this is what's driving me crazy, folks. I mean, here at the Radical Agenda, we reluctantly transition from the mindset of the market anarchist to that of the authoritarian out of sheer necessity, right? We saw Black Lives Matter burning their own cities to the ground over violent criminals meeting their demise at the hands of law enforcement. We saw communists tearing our communities apart over the supposed rights of illegal immigrants. Whatever merits we might have imagined there to be in a purely market economy, the situation of the moment demanded a strong hand to avoid total catastrophe. And so, even though we had previously concluded that elections were stupid popularity contests and thus beneath our dignity, we cheered on Donald Trump to become president and wield authority as God Emperor to stop the lawlessness we saw unfolding before our eyes. Those who have been following along since are all too well aware of the causes for our disappointment, of course. The riots did not cease. They rather increased in frequency while simultaneously decreasing in coherence. No longer did we have the luxury of arguing against a single mistaken premise that cops were hunting Negroes for sport, an easily disproven myth caused by ignorance of human biodiversity. As time went forward, leftist intersectionality made discourse completely unfathomable. The entire system of white supremacy, they said, must be dismantled. Our entire history had to be erased. Our population had to be replaced. Our system of government had to be torn down and replaced with arbitrary force to be wielded at the hands of people who could not discern their gender by their genitals. The violence of mental defectives became speech, and the speech of white intellectuals became violence. Riots became self-defense, and self-defense became murder and malicious wounding. Good men went to prison while criminals celebrated in the streets. Courts convicted men of felonies for their failure to prove their innocence to the satisfaction of their lying accusers. And even as the rioters got their way, time and again the riots continued. This is unsurprising to those who think of things in terms of incentives. Of course, when a government rewards something, you get more of it. When they tax or otherwise punish something, you get less of it. This is not difficult to comprehend, and since the greatest rewards come from political power and success, that which is rewarded thereby will predictably become a prevalent feature of the society which grants such rewards. Initially, the decent people of the society resist this temptation. Riots and revolutions to them seem as undignified as they are uncivilized. These upstanding white folks raise their concerns verbally and through the appropriate channels. If they feel compelled to take to the streets to express their concerns, they apply for the appropriate permits and assemble peaceably as their constitutions grant them the right to do. Yet over time, the incentives take their toll on the civility of all. If the civilized folk are chased from the street by the same violent criminals who got their way from a prior riot, the government refuses to protect them, and decent people are left without peaceful options, then the very definition of decency necessarily evolves. What decent person can let civilization itself fall by the wayside and succumb to the whims of communism and degeneracy when it becomes obvious that the past and present rulers lack the wisdom and fortitude of the kings they previously overthrew, and it becomes just as obvious that the forms to which they have become accustomed are sure to empower more timid and incompetent rulers, then there necessarily exists a competition between decency and civility, and any man who wishes to think himself decent must put civility aside. For this example, we look across the pond. As Paris burns, we here in America are told that left and right alike are united in revolt against the fuel tax, one of many senseless and regressive policies supposedly aimed at changing the weather by extracting from the citizenry the fruits of their labor at gunpoint. How did the policy come to be implemented in the first place? Well, by violence and deception, of course. Leftists have long screamed that climate change, formerly known as global warming and global cooling before that, is an existential crisis that will surely doom all of mankind to alternating states of burning and freezing, depending upon the news of the day. Every hurricane, earthquake, forest fire, drought, and flood is blamed on this. Even terrorism, crime, obesity, and famine have all come to be singularly connected to this supposed phenomenon, which one can be punished for questioning the scientific rigor of. Faced with this supposed existential threat, leftists have rioted at the G20 and other major events throughout the world. They were rewarded with their favorite drug, taxation, and when the public predictably became angry about the taxes, they again broke out the matches and gasoline.
We're back to base.
How did France reward this lawlessness? By repealing the tax and ordering private employers to hand out cash bonuses to their employees. And so I beg of the government officials who listen to this production to please call in. Tell me what incentive that spells out for those of us who cheered on Brett Kavanaugh, largely for the hope that he would stand up to the infanticide giant Planned Parenthood, now that he has joined with the left in protecting their government funding, despite the dissent of Justices Thomas Gorsuch and Alito. Let me know how we should react as James Fields faces the same penalty for trying to escape gun-toting communist rioters as Robert Bowers faces for gunning down 11 non-combatants in a Pittsburgh synagogue. How ought our patriotism guide us as we watch the invasion of our country unfold before our eyes on national television, and the president we elected to stop it is prevented from doing so by judges whom we did not so elect? What are decent men to do when indecency wins the day and the very concept of righteousness threatens to be erased from the human consciousness for the remainder of eternity? These are not rhetorical questions. I demand answers.
I'm still waiting on that Christmas update.